Hello everyone, welcome back to the Haripriya channels. Today we're going to see a communication process and set. Moreover, we know the what is a communication is. We will talk to some other person. That is only we know of the communications. In the management side, what are the communication process will be heading on the principles of management. We will move on the videos. What does mean by communication? The communication is the delivered from the Latin word of communis. It's a common meaning of common. It's a general communication refers to the you have to exchanging informations, ideas, facts, and opinions and feelings, all those stuffs. We will communication to two peoples or a group of peoples. What is the definition? The some other authors will be discussing about us. The communication is a process of which is exchanging in our information and based on a common system of symbols and sign and behaviors. And the communication is a interchanging in our thoughts and opinion to the another person. We will write or a sign based on the speech. And the communication meaning as to exchange the ideas, values, thoughts, feelings. It will be transferred to the another person. It's a right context. The process of initiating, transmitting, we have to receiving the informations. That is the meaning of the referring of the information productive and goal oriented. The process of sharing the information is ideas to the attitude based on our behaviors. Now, what is the process of communication? Will be working on the some other person or in between our two persons. One is a sender and the another one is a receiver. There is a two transmitter we are having into communicating the some other persons. The sender we will convey in our ideas to the some other person to call is a encoding. It will be receiving the message channels. After that we have to answering the particular person, that is called the decoding. That is the process we will working on the communication skill. And after that the receiver will be giving on the feedbacks how it will be talking is based on, for example, we will talking to the and public meeting. We have to some receivers, we are a senders will be conveying our thoughts and values, whatever we will having in our mind, we will sharing to the some other persons. The person will be receiving to the particular thing in based on their thoughts. You have to giving on the feedback with us. That is the process of communication. What are the elements will we communicate with the two other persons? The refer motivates the sender to sharing in our information. We have to, before we have to communicate to the someone, we have to motivate them how it will be listening in our us. That is calling a message, object, sound, and sight. That is the elements we will having in a communication, the intermediate and initiate the communicate. For example, a nurse citing a patient with the difficulty in breathing may be having a service as the reservant to the nurse promoting her to the intimate communication with the patients. This is the examples of the elements. What is the sender? Sender is a person who encoding and sends the messages to the expecting the receivers to appropriate the channels. The sender is the source of the messages. We will delivering the some other thoughts to the appreciate with the relevant thoughts with the other persons. What is the message? Message is the very crucial thing we will communicate with the other person. That is the content variables is the non variables are the symbolic languages. For example, some messages may be communicated or some messages will be differently with the two persons. I will share my thoughts to the some other person. It will be a convey to the some other reason they will convey to them in their minds. Perceived differently, it will be take it out in my communication thoughts. The indicate the outcomes will be communications may be not be achieved. The in my mind it not communicate with us in some other mind. It will be a some difference we are having to hearing and listening and communications. That is the two difference over here. What is a channel? Channel is a sending and receiver between the two more peoples will be talking to through the medium side. The several channels can be used to send and receiver to message and seeing and hearing and touching and smelling and testing to the communicator. The facilitator may be considered effectively in our channels to the purpose, sustainability and types of receivers and proposite of the centers and receiver communication skills of the senders and cost, etc. These are the channels will be working on the communication elements. The next one is we will move on the what are the channels we will having to communicate the some other person. The one is the visual channels and second one is the audio channels and tactile channels and combined channels. Visual channels, we have to only a visual thing. For example, is a picture, written words and example maze. Auditory channel is nothing but you have to hearing, spoken words and sounds and telephones and mobile phones. And tactile channel is touch sensations and touch therapy. That is the communication for the tactile channels. Combined channels is nothing but it's a audio and visual medias. For example, in television. And next we will move on the receiver side. The receiver is an individual or group of the individual indicated with the receiver side. We have a sender is maybe a source of message. The receiver as also a decoder to receiving in our thoughts. The expected to the ability and skills to receive, decode and interpret the message to the sender. Then next is the feedback. What is the feedback? After we communicating to the receiver will giving back to the feedback what are the things they are having in our mind. They will share in their thoughts. That is called the feedback. It's most essential elements of the communication process. It shows that the receiver has the understand and primary messages sent by the receivers. The communication process now considered complete. After feedback we have to receive, that is only the communication will be completed. And before that we will communicate, just we have to share in our thoughts only to the receiver just listening or a touching sensation in some of the elements we are having, we will communicate to togetherness. When after the receiver will be giving on the feedback to the in our thoughts, that is the completed communication with the both of us. The feedback could be a verbal or non-verbal things. And the confounding elements is nothing but it's a receiver, the environment where the communication process taking a place. For example, the interpersonal variables such as beliefs, values, social culture backgrounds and educational development and effective to the communication process. And next one is the what is the types of communications. We will move on the types. The first one is the based on the means we have to delivering in our messages. Based on the purpose we will communication to the some other person. Based in our level we have to communicate. And next one is the based on the pattern. Based on the means of delivering the messages is the first one is the verbal communications. What does mean by verbal communication? It will be very clear and preventive and timing and relevance and comprehensive to communicate to the some other persons. The word convey a specific meaning. We have to speaking to the some other person. You have some purpose. We have to speaking to the some other person. These are the things we have to verbal communication. It's a very formal communications will be conveying to the some. For example, we will talking to the manager. We will talking to the HR person. We will talking to the colleague. That is the some of the meaning we are having and some other purpose we are having. That we have to communicate the another persons. And next one is the subtypes of the verbal communication. The first one is spoken, written and telecommunications and electronic communication. These are the four types we are having in the communications. And next one is the based means. The second type of communication is non-verbal communications. It's nothing when we have to talking to in our friends. In non-verbal communication is a more accurate way we have to communicate the some other person. You conveying the true and intended meaning to the intended meaning of the communication in the messages. It's nothing but for example in touch, high contact, facial expressions and postures and glit and physical appearance in the sound and silence. That is for examples of the interview mode of non-verbal communications. These are the things we are having on the communicate with the some other person. The person will be noted, or these are things we have to followed by the interview or some next people in the third person peoples. Next one is the based on the purpose we have to communicate the some other person. Is nothing but it's organizations to achieve the organizational objectives. We have to, for example, we have to nursing. We have a superintendent of the hospital. We will communicate the staff nurse through the assistant nurse and superintendent and supervisor and ward in charge nurses. These are the things we have to communicate the some organizational and staffs to the indoor in our organizations. That is a formal communication. What are the duties we are having? They have to convey to us. That is called the formal communications. The next one is the informal communication. Is nothing but that is a gossip. We already know it, right? Informational communication is done is follow the line of authority. Don't have any rules and regulations. We have to communicate with our friends. That is very fast and usually taking place in social groups like friends, family, and peer groups, etc. The next one is the we'll moving on the based on the levels we have to communicate with the some other person. That is nothing but you have to within an individual we may also say in a self talk. We have to talking to the self thing. For example, before we have to preparing in our interview, we have to telling in ourselves in before of in front of mirror. We have to assess in ourselves. We have to communicate the some other persons. Provide the person with an opportunity to access self or a situation before acting on it intimately affecting the person's behavior. Based on the behavior, talk to this. That is the personal communication. Interpersonal communications is nothing means we have to two or more people and interact and exchange the message or an idea. For example, that is called the team meeting. The team meeting we have to arrange in one layer, sharing in our thoughts in the new project. We have to building in our new things. We have to communicate with the in our colleague or in our friends. In also one of the most common form of communication is in our daily lives. That is called the interpersonal transpersonal communication is nothing but it's a spiritual domain. It's have some domains we have to communicate to some other person. The persons of interpersonal communication is also relates selfhood, anger, spirituality, question and answer. We have to spiritual in nature. We are asking us some questions to the will person in some another third person. We will answering on the spiritual thing. That is called the spiritual domain. We have some domains we have to communicate to the third persons. In small group communication is it's face to face medium of conference, or that is the face to face communications. That is the like a conversations. We have to sharing in our idea in our meeting, or we have to talking to the in eye contact. For example, in staff meeting and small good example of small group communications. That is the based on the levels we have to communicate the one person or some more persons. Then next one is the public communication. Public communication is a large group of people. We have to communicate to the particular thing. We have to public clearly and loudly. We have to communicate the reach of the member. What are the thoughts we will convey to the particular peoples. That is the public communication. Next one is the organizational communication. Is nothing but we have to each other to achieve established in our organizational goal. That is the organizational communication. We group in a teams in a group we have to achieving in our organizational goals. We have to being together we have to achieving the one particular goal in our organizations. That is the level of organizational communications. And next one is the what is a pattern of communications. We have a several patterns we are having in our communications thing. That is the first one is the one way communication. So one way communication is just I will share in my thoughts to the some other person. It doesn't have any feedback to themselves. They have to only one person we have to talking to her. In a class, for example, in a classroom I will talking to you, I will shared in my thoughts to my students. That is the delivering in our lecture deliveries. That is the best examples of the one way communications. And next one is the two way communications. That is nothing where you have to talking to a communicator and audience and taking a part of process. The audience may be raising a questions and adding informations, ideas and opinions on the subject of the communication domain. Next one is the one-to-one communications. One-to-one communication we have a one sender and second one is the receiver after replayer. For example, the receiver is also called a replayer. I will talking to the one person, I will asking a question, he will giving a replies. That is the one-to-one communications. Next one is the one-to-many communications. For example, the health education to make community is an example of one-to-many communications. One person communicate with many people at the same time. That is the term is the one to many communications. The many to one communication. Many people will be sitting in our front of the panel. We have to talking to the one person. That is called the interview process. That is the many to one communications. Thank you guys. We will see you on the next topic. We will moving on the what is the communication methods, what are the techniques we were having on the communication. We will see on the next video. Thank you for watching.